Hello. Yeah. Now I'm audible. I'm hope. Okay. Good evening. We are at the last panel for the day. I will not keep you too long. This is a very a panel and a topic which is very close to our heart, and the reason for that is way back when we started our engineering, pretty long back, no? And even before, maybe even when my parents were doing engineering, we've always had some form of virtual reality or the other. And it's very different from what we see now. Virtual reality and augmented reality were invented largely to help with the design and manufacturing process. But the way we know it now is extremely different. It's largely on the consumer side. What we wanted to pick up today with eminent set of panelists is to think about how virtual reality, augmented reality is being consumed in the manufacturing, design, training, back into our engineering focus areas, and how we need to start working on that. We have a great set of panelists. We have people from the industry, from Bosch, Dattatreya. We have people from the platform, from Siemens, and again, JV from Schneider. And what I'll start discussing is in terms of why we believe virtual reality is very close to a tipping point. I'm sure, how many of you have played Pokemon Go? That's it? Okay, nice, good. The rest of you should play because that is, and to an extent, Pari did steal my thunder in the morning by taking all my points about Pokemon Go. But that was an abstruse, geeky technology called augmented reality, which is suddenly mainstream. And it is so mainstream that Nintendo's stock is up by $7.5 billion. That's a company that enabled that technology on the consumer side. What we want to discuss is the fact that virtual reality, augmented reality is almost similar. But at the same time, virtual reality, we believe, is very close to that kind of a tipping point. It just needs to fulcrum around a certain area, and we will see that massive adoption, especially across engineering, manufacturing, training, etc. So one of the first areas of discussion would be with the panelists is where are we seeing this adoption, and which are these areas that are getting adopted? And one of the things that we want to do is keep it very focused, give a lot of examples, data points, and less of overall 36,000 feet work. So what is actually happening now? So maybe we can start with Dattatreya. Where do you see it getting really adopted right now?
Thanks, Siddhant. Virtual reality is almost here. It has been for quite some time. We all who do product development would know that in recent past also, we have stopped actually producing anything without having, without visually creating it. Yeah. So I talk about 3D models of a product, how they actually interact, how do they assemble. This has all been there. And in terms of virtual reality, yes. And I see that moving on. You said tipping point. Tipping point I see is because it is going to be even bigger and bigger. And one of the big drivers, personally, I see is because of the all-pervasive mobile devices. Now we have very smart, very powerful platforms in our hands on mobile phones, on tablet PCs, which have all the constituents. We have sensors. You rightly said about the fun side of that, augmented reality, the game, Pokemon, which is getting very popular. But yes, I see that this is the tipping point, and that is going to make it even more challenging, even more interesting. In terms of product development, we see that we have extended it already to product configurators. Our sales guys, when they go and sit in front of their customers, they not only can talk about the specifications, but they can digitally create a product and then and there show it and ask, is this what you mean? Yeah? So this is really cutting down product development times by magnitude of factors. This would be one example, and I would...
Interesting. I think that's a good point. So it's not just design, manufacturing, it's also extending towards enabling the sales process. Can we have the customer look at what he wants, configure it, and just go back to the manufacturing and they make exactly that? And maybe with 3D printing, that can almost happen instantaneously. Bobby, you had a good point in terms of the concept of virtual reality. Whenever we think about virtual reality, we think about the big Oculus glasses and nice visual scenery for us. But virtual reality is not just about visuals. It is also about data. Data and how the virtual data is going to enable and how that is the one that will actually transform the way we are manufacturing, designing some of the things. Bobby, I think you had some good points there. So would you want to touch upon them?
Yeah, so virtual reality in its own parlance has existed, as Dattatreya mentioned, for many, many years. And the whole idea of CAD, computer-aided designing, manufacturing, the whole digital manufacturing pieces, the whole engineering analysis, all this has existed for many years. However, there is a clear difference between how consumer space perceives virtual reality versus how the whole manufacturing space adopts it or perceives it. In the whole consumer space, it's connected more to do with the whole entertainment piece, and hence you see the whole Oculus and
Correct.
the whole Hive and all the other pieces. However, in the manufacturing, and why is it so, is because the idea is to create interactive, immersive, imaginative, almost real-time and lifelike environment. In manufacturing, there is a massive difference, and that lies in the whole word almost. In manufacturing, there is no space, especially when we are talking about getting it first time right. When we are talking about mission critical operations, there is nothing called almost. So how really it's getting changed is it has to be almost perfect, which basically means it has to be perfect. And it has to be real, and it has to be in that physical environment and lifelike. So the margins of error are low, and the only way that it's going to get adopted wider, or the inflection point, is what's happening that Industry 4.0, the whole industrial revolution, where you are getting the real-time data in there, and the whole environment is not just almost lifelike, but the environment is lifelike. So to give you an example, what's happening, one of my friends, Jack, was asked to go and repair one of the pumps in a nuclear power plant, and it's a pump, it's in the core of a nuclear power plant, and Jack has to go in and repair it. And while this is happening, there are people monitoring this, and what we see is there is a huge amount of radiation that's coming out in that particular power plant, and it's almost fatal levels of radiation that Jack is exposed to. Jack is not worried. None of the people who are watching are worried. For a simple reason, Jack is not real. And all this is happening in a virtual environment. The whole power plant has been simulated. It's not almost a power plant. It is a real nuclear power plant that is getting simulated, and a real pump that is getting repaired with a real tool that Jack is using. And Jack is also a real name that we use for our digital manufacturing piece, Jack and Jill, to get our child back. And so that really exists, and it is happening in manufacturing, in maintenance, and in some of these really highly sensitive
It's almost
areas.
like a virtual reality game.
It's
Interesting.
almost
Okay.
working with Jack there.
Yeah, good. And I think, JV, you had some points in terms of how Schneider has products in certain specific areas, which is new, and that's where you are seeing some adoption. So could you touch upon that? Yeah.
So, just to extend the point that Bobby was making, right? I mean, given that our industry being industrial automation or process automation is extremely sensitive to safety, okay, as one of the key areas from a people perspective. And solutions for actually simulating a worker actually doing a walkthrough through the plant, going around and fiddling with the controls and seeing the impact of the controls on the overall process is something that Schneider has got products on. There's a product named EYESIM, EYESIM, that's actually in the market, which enables functionality like that. It brings the control engineer very close to the plant engineer, and it ensures that it is being done in a very safe environment and a safe way to actually, and so it's a very useful training case,
Any,
right?
any other examples from other areas? One is process. Anything else you want to touch upon?
Yeah, I have seen examples of augmented reality, I mean, which I think is gaining more momentum than virtual reality,
Okay.
given that augmented reality can actually use low-cost smart devices or like smartphones, right? So, for example, in a smartphone, there is a user scenario where a maintenance operator is walking through the plant with a smartphone, and he points it to a device, and it shows up contextual information related to this device requires to be maintained in the next 2 days, and this device requires to be replaced in the next 10 days. And if you've seen videos of Microsoft HoloLens, that shows an excellent example of how these are increasingly going to get more and more adopted going forward.
Great. So I think quickly to round up this set was we've seen use cases in not just design but in sales, in safety, in process, and to an extent in training as well. I just want to get the audience involved now. A lot of these things seem very abstruse. I'm sure we relate more to Pokemon Go. But as engineers, as people developing products, are there any applications that you really want virtual reality to be in? And it's like something that's right there, but you have not seen it. Yeah, please go ahead. Interesting. Surgery. Good. I think we had, when we were discussing, a wonderful example from there. Anybody else? Training. Very good. So we'll talk about training as well. Perfect. Anything else? Yes? Collaboration. Perfect. Perfect. Okay.
I'm Joy from Microsoft. I think another example is like we can use it for a biological lab where we sometimes kill the animals to test, right? Some anatomy.
Oh, okay. Virtual
experiment.
animals.
Yeah. So experimentation
good.
for that,
Okay.
so that we can save the lives.
Makes sense. Any other like out of the world applications that you are thinking about and it should be enabled but it's not yet there? Something that will really help you design your product better. Ah, interesting. You're going into cognitive. Okay, cognitive married with virtual reality. Nice. Okay, great. So I think those were good points, and I will direct the discussion towards that. We looked at surgery, we looked at training. I think we had a couple of examples that Dattatreya you had on the surgery portion. So maybe you could quickly touch upon that. And I think Bobby, you had an example on the training portion. Maybe you can talk about these two examples and then we can go from there.
I mean, on the surgery, what I foresee is that a big boost comes from technologies like 3D printing. And I would give an example that there is a company not very far from this place here in Peña that specializes in making 3D printing on metals. And they showcased recently a knee joint. And this is an example where I say that the doctors can actually measure, let's say if I'm the patient, and if I have to undergo, they can actually measure my kneecap and give a 3D model, and that can be printed and delivered. And this would be really, very helpful, fast, and yeah. So this would be one use case that I foresee almost about happening now.
So Bobby, you had an interesting example on training.
Yeah, and before I just move to the training piece, because one lady mentioned and there is the whole surgery piece, just one example of how virtual reality, people think which end of the spectrum is it really going to affect? Is it going to be really advanced end of virtual reality and its application? Or is it going to be some of those absolutely relevant training and learning pieces, cognitive and those pieces of process that will get affected? Siemens recently, the whole Mars rover laboratory, the whole Mars rover Curiosity piece that was happening, and there was no human involved in the whole process of at least taking it
Because you
for
can't
those.
test, you can't test. And
You
send somebody
can't.
to Mars and
The
get the
atmosphere
data.
is 1,000 times thinner. It's only 600 million kilometers away. It has to travel at speeds of 76,000 kilometers to 21,000 kilometers when it enters the atmosphere. Land at 2 kilometers and then eventually be placed. So this is an extremely high-end application of how all these pieces were simulated, including the manufacturing of each and every component, including how 8,000 different combinations of how the launch will happen, how the landing will happen, 1,600 degrees Celsius of difference in the temperature that it's going to go through. And this was done perfectly, and this was all done in virtual reality a few 100,000 times before finally this whole launch and the landing was made. So operations and surgeries and some of those pieces which are actually, we think usually we will allow robots or machines to work only in spaces which are not really that critical. But in fact, the other way around, it's working the other way around. As more and more data is available, as more and more information is available, heart surgeries will probably be done by robots and not by humans. Today, airplanes are not really flown by humans. I mean, only a
Right.
very small part of it is. But autopilots do most of the job. So similarly, probably the most advanced and most critical and the toughest pieces will be done by virtual reality.
Makes sense. So the other thing that we wanted to discuss in the next half is why we are not seeing that much of an adoption.
Can I
yeah,
just
please.
extend it to the training piece? I think that's a very, very valid point. I would like to give you an example at Bosch what we have. We get a lot of fresh students from colleges who have to work on high-end automobiles. And to train them is really a big activity that we have. And for this, we already use augmented reality. We have cutouts, engine cutouts, we have section cutouts. And if you come to our office in Koramangala, then you can see a very nice cutout of a high-end car that we have kept there. And we basically have augmented reality pieces onto that. So looking at a tab in front of that car, you can put the matching pieces of the cutouts, and then you can simulate how complex things flow. For example, how air is flowing at different speed cycles, at different load cycles of the car, and it's all simulated, augmented reality, and you see things actually flowing in blue and green colors. So the visual impact of that training and learning is really long-lasting, is very fast, and it is very individual. You don't have to read manuals. You learn it, yeah, as a game.
Interesting. I wish I had that. I just had to open up all the engines in my first job.
We saw it. We actually showed it to our Prime Minister, Mr. Modi,
Oh.
and the German Prime Minister, that is from Merkel, when they visited us in October last year.
Interesting. What I want to do is think about why it's not really being adopted, and what is it that we in India need to do in terms of ensuring that within our companies, within our ecosystem, and Pari mentioned about disruptive leadership, how we can make virtual reality, augmented reality as one of the points or fulcrums towards this disruptive leadership. So JV, you had a couple of points in terms of certain areas which need to be developed on from the India context. And if you want to touch upon that and throw some light on those areas.
So I'll talk about a little bit about why the adoption in industry has been a little slower than expected. One is the concept of IIoT devices in industry being available at the right price point, right? I mean, you can have actuators and sensors at lowest levels, but if they are not intelligent devices that can actually compute stuff on their own, can actually transmit data through networks and so on,
So there's infrastructure technology.
there's an
for
infrastructure
hardware.
cost, right? So
Okay.
the customer should be willing to pay that price for it, right? So that is that's one challenge that I've seen in the adoption of these kind of
Correct.
technologies. But going forward, I see that the adoption will happen because the technologies are being available at a price point where they can be adopted. You have Gen X, which is coming in as the new workforce in many industries, and with a retiring, aging workforce that's going to go out, and with the training use cases we spoke about, right? Augmented with that, how do these guys actually use this technology to perform their jobs better.
Correct.
Okay.
Makes sense. Interesting. So Dattatreya, you've been part of Bosch for a long time, and Bosch is one of the pioneers in terms of running a R&D center in India for such a long time. How do you see this being run within Bosch or in any of the centers? What really needs to happen? How do you put it into implementation? How do you create these disruptive pods around VR or AR?
I would say first of all, I would like to say that yes, all the technology pieces are here, and then what is remaining is actually our imagination. That we have to think of things where we can deploy these technologies. Even, I would say, beyond Bosch. In Bangalore, a lot of things are happening. Some of you might have seen the James Bond movie, Skyfall. The whole fight that happened on the frozen lake actually was a lake in Whitefield, yeah? So it was actually all simulated out here in Bangalore.
Really?
Yeah. So a lot of things are happening, and it's only that at these forums we make these things even more popular so that each one of you take back some idea and challenge your teams saying that, hey, let's do it. In Bosch, yes, it is happening in a very, very rapid way. We see that areas where we are attacking, bringing in these technologies, first is, of course, training. I gave you an example. Next, user experience. How do you create a user experience for the products before even a person walks in? Yeah, this is one big thing where we are working on right now. And yes, of course, in the industrial IoT space, preventive maintenance, some of the examples JV said, looking at this and looking at a faulty piece and then projecting the image thousands of kilometers away to an expert who basically looks at this part and overlays some of the information and gives some instructions to the person.
Great.
Maintenance of our washing machines, home appliances. Yeah. These are some of the things where these technologies are already getting in.
Interesting. So I have a few minutes left. Any questions? Yeah, good.
So I have a question around adoption. And, it's one of the points that was made earlier is it has to be perfect. And reality is in fact more fault tolerant. So when it has to be perfect, there's no such thing as good enough.
Dichotomy.
And as a result, people go into these digital thread journeys, but they can't realize the benefits because they're not going earlier in the life cycle and making it perfect.
I
So
think,
how do we overcome that
that's
is
a
my
good,
question.
Good point. So I think what he's saying is, although we are trying to make it as perfect as possible, but maybe we are not capturing the reality because it is so perfect. So is there a dichotomous situation that you see there?
That can be actually answered by the safety standard that the US has for its own, electricity and power research institutes has come together for nuclear power plants. The safety standard itself that's getting adopted is called as low as possibly achievable, ALARA. So it's basically as much as it's achievable.
not defined,
It's
it's
not
just as much
expected
as-
to be perfect. As much as you can push it, as much as you can take, as far as you can take it. So I think, and hence how can a standard be left with so much, imperfection, whereas
Interesting.
whatever is achievable.
So I think the answer is it is happening. We are moving closer to imperfection even in the digital world. Sure.
It's not happening.
Yeah,
You're not
I think
going
we
back.
can discuss more. Anybody else has a question? Great. So I think JV, you had another couple of points in terms of how really you had the R&D center at Schneider. What are your ideas in terms of really implementing it within the Indian ecosystem, within the R&D organizations?
So it obviously starts with, when we talk of R&D, one of my main goals is how do I make the system or product as cost effective for my customer as possible, right? I work in an industry which is an oligopoly. Okay, there are 5 or 6 players, okay, that is the main thing, right? So anything that we do has to have the right use case at the right price point for the customer. And the way we would go about doing such a thing is to, so Dattatreya said the technology pieces exist today, right? So we typically put together a small team of people that have got the expertise in these technologies and run several proof of concepts before something can be
What
productionized.
you're saying is it's about, I think as Dattatreya mentioned, about imagination and then putting together a team and allowing some of these experiments to
And-
reach maturity.
Yeah, and
figure
we
it
look at these experiments in a time-bound fashion. So in our case, we look at 4-week experiments.
Got it. Got
So-
it. Great. I think we're close to the end of our time. So I'll just quickly round off this discussion by saying that virtual reality is not just about games and good visuals. It is about creating data and as real life situations as possible for manufacturing, for design. And we have seen multiple use cases across the PDLC, as we say, and across the PDLC on sales and before that. And in terms of implementation, I guess as Dattatreya mentioned, it is about our imagination. And we as leaders within the R&D ecosystem should figure out interesting use cases which can disrupt our own products and the overall industry as a whole. Great. Okay. I think this is good. Thanks, guys.